All right, so we're excited to have on the Youngpreneur podcast today, Andrew Moyer. So welcome, Andrew. We're glad you took some time out of your day to come hang out with us. I know we had a little fun before the podcast, and so it kind of
it's hard to get serious for
right. It is. So here we are in Joplin. Wanted to kind of jump in with you on some leadership stuff and some stuff we've been talking about before the podcast, and some really good talking points. And so we want to get started on that right now. You want to share a little bit about your bio with us and kind of who Andrew Moyer is?
Yeah, I can share a few things. I know you guys are focused on the real estate side of things, and probably you two know more about real estate than I do. You're the experts there. I have owned investment real estate and can hope to continue to grow in that. And I've owned a couple of companies. I started as a high school dropout. 15-year-old trying to figure out what I'm going to do. And it's like, are you going to mow lawns or are you going to do this? And started doing some carpet cleaning and kind of grew that and grew a couple other businesses, was able to sell a few businesses. My wife and I decided, okay, what do we really want to do with our life? Because making money has been fun, but maybe not as meaningful as we need it to be. Like the work attached to the making money part has left us feeling a little bit at odds with our character development. So we jumped off into like full-time ministry for 8 years, which is way harder. Like managing a church full of people
right.
and a few employees is way harder than managing like 40, 50 employees. Like it is more difficult, I'm telling you, because there's a lot involved there.
You sure the volunteer versus paid? I've noticed a difference there when I lead a volunteer organization versus paid W-2 employees. So.
Absolutely. What they say a lot of times in business school is like, if you can lead a volunteer, you can lead an employee, because really you're leading these motivators that are outside of money, and if you can figure out how to do that, you'll have zero problem leading employees. So, that's been a fun journey. I've consulted on and off for a long time. I have degrees in chemistry and business, minors in political science and philosophy, and I have a master's degree in business. So, working on a doctorate soon. So, 3 years from now, still left. Hopefully, I'll have a doctorate. We'll see. I'm not much for thesis writing, so we'll see how that part of the journey goes. But yeah.
So will we have to call you doctor then?
You will. I will publish a list of people that have to call me doctor, and you're going to be on that.
Perfect. I appreciate that. As long as we come celebrate with you.
Right? Cool. Yeah. Doctor. Yeah. I'm especially looking for the flight when someone's like, do we have a doctor on the plane? And be like, yes. In management. What do you guys need? I will solve the problem. We need a medical doctor now. Thanks, Brad. I know you guys need my input. I'll manage it from here. We need a medical doctor?
Well,
so,
be put to good use.
Yeah. That's what I'm trying to say. Saving lives. But I really do have an interest in a few things. I'm hoping that my doctorate can get me there. But what I've realized is when I went to school for the means of hoping to make money, I was miserable because I was like, I already know how to make money. Like, school's not helping me with that. Now, I know now that that's a lie, and what I know now is I could have probably saved some money on some things if I had the education that I have today. But the truth is that the education is an ins and of itself. Like, I feel more fulfilled as a person the more education I get, the more that I read books, even outside of education, than I would otherwise. And I think it's the same way with work. The more we look at work as a means to doing something else, the more miserable you're going to be in life. Like, the more you work to buy the thing, the more you enslave yourself. You become this pharaonic or pharaoh figure in your own life, driving this, I get to play when I get off here. Like, if you hate your job that much that you're only thinking about what you can do outside of work, then we have a problem with the people you work with or the work you do or your mentality. Something's broken here. So anyway, that was probably... I started answering other questions.
Yeah, so you're jumping into that. I think kind of where we're headed is...
Yeah.
I know, we have an event tonight, but next month we've got to how to leave your W-2.
Yeah.
And so it's going to be, I think it's going to be really eye-opening because a lot of our folks are W-2 employees, and they're always looking at maybe jumping out of that. But there's a lot there, and I know next month we're going to really dive into that and help them understand what it's like to take that leap. But before the podcast, we were talking through like Hertzberg's
sanitation or hygiene factors.
Yes.
So I think these are really important. And I just want to be clear that I'm going to give you tools today for leadership in general and the behaviors and motivators in leadership. And the whole point of this podcast is to ask, how can we motivate yourself and others? And you have to realize, I say this to real estate agents, I say this to insurance people all the time, it's like, you have to have a team even if you have no employees. Like if you're a real estate agent and you don't see the people around you, your network as a team, and know how to motivate those people to be for you and for the mission and declare and give some good exacts on where you're headed, you're not going to get to where you're going because you have too many weaknesses. And we talked about this one time when we were talking. Chris is like, money is a time value equation. Mm-hmm. You don't have the time to build enough value within yourself alone without using the people around you to overcome that equation. So if you really want to make money, you have to add enough value mm-hmm. in a short amount of time as possible, and you are not going to fix all of your weaknesses to get to that value. So all that to say is that's the goal of what we're talking about today. So these hygiene factors, if you will, basically Hertzberg is looking at factory workers and he's going, it's strange because we've been focused on like fixing problems at factories. We've been doing all these things and people seem to be content, but it's short run. They're not any more or less happy than they were. And that's because, for instance, something like workplace safety, right? Just because you don't go home and you're like, my job is so safe, guys. I feel so safe, so like nobody lost a finger today. You're not like bragging to all your friends that no one died at work day in, day out, right? So,
no, never.
But if that were the case and people were dying at work, you would eventually be like, oh, okay, this is bad. So there are things in your environment that can dissatisfy you, but don't necessarily satisfy you, like workplace safety, company policies, your supervision styles and techniques, mm-hmm. like relationships with peers, work conditions, salary is important. Status is another thing. Like, people think they want status, but how long does that high last? Less than money, and money is not a great motivator is what we've found. And people say that cliche, but that's real, legit psychological business studies. The things that do motivate people are the opportunities for achievement, which is a little bit of a gray area. But what I mean by that is like, I give you enough autonomy to say, hey, the goal is this. I don't care how you get there. This is the opportunity to achieve something great and say that you authored whatever that was. Like, that's super important to people. Getting recognition for what they've done is actually more valuable over time than money, right? And that's super interesting. The work itself, which we kind of talked about, the value of, do you feel like this is an important work for the world or important for the people around you or for your community? And that's how contractors can even feel like, well, what am I doing? I'm building houses. No, you're changing the trajectory of this community, making more housing. Like, these things are super important. Responsibility, when people feel responsible and they've been given that authority, that's what I love about these are like jobs where you make a mistake and you own it and your employer says, that's awesome. I love that. Yep. Let's learn from that. Thank you for owning it. Like, people, that creates some huge, so the opportunity for investment and then personal growth. So those are some of the things that Hertzberg would say, these are important. And the problem with that is when you become self-employed, when you leave behind that W-2 like you were talking about, who does these things with you and for you?
Right. Generally it's yourself.
Yeah.
Maybe like, if you have a mentor.
Good job. Right.
Yeah.
I gave myself lots of recognition today. Yeah. You have to build them into your life. So, because it can be so easy to be caught up in, did I win? What's that mean? Well, did I make enough money? Well, is that really going to motivate you 10 years from now? Well, yeah, it's a motivator, but and it's a goal line of success, but if it's not tied to what that means for you on a deeper level, then you don't care. Like, I guarantee you will lose sight of things and be demotivated. So, yeah.
So people that, you see a lot of people take that leap. Is that probably the biggest reason for their failure? Because let's face it, people step out of business all the time, or out of a W-2 into business all the time, and they fail. Lots of people fail. Do you think that's the number one cause, or?
I think there's a lot of ignorance that happens. So I would say the number one cause is when they quit being curious or inquisitive and believing they have it figured out. That's usually the line of failure. So, and I would say what follows that is that you put a lower precedent on what it means to be a better woman or a better man or build your character. And as soon as you stop character building, I think that is, you're going to plateau.
Right.
I mean, so that's what I see. Like I've interceded with businesses this year. They've hired me, and not for a small amount. Like businesses will hire me for up to $300 an hour to be with them 6 hours a week, and they're desperate to turn the ship around. And I have yet to go into an organization like that where the number one problem wasn't culture. Because if the culture was good, their people themselves would have solved the problem.
Mm-hmm.
They would have been worried enough about the numbers. They would have been problem solving. Someone would have gave enough people permission to find the right people to use the tools. Right. And so I would say 9 times out of 10, the issue is culture, and the issue with culture is character. So does that make sense? Character is culture. So you guys have read books like Traction, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what is the number one thing they evaluate for employees? It's culture. Or you read 5 Dysfunctional Teams. Like, it's easy to hold people accountable for numbers. It's hard to hold people accountable for character.
Right.
And so those things bleed away at your organization. You lose great people when you have a bad culture. You know.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Awesome.
Sorry, I'm a pontificator.
Yeah, we love it.
Yeah. So, yeah.
So, you know, and we're looking through some, you know, the B.F. Skinner psychology, and this is taking me way back when Katie sent these over today, or you copied me last night. I'm like, man, you know, back to psychology class, back to college. And I had to really kind of go back in and look at these again. And I know you want to touch on them a little bit, and I'd love to hear that. I know the listeners on this podcast, that's kind of what they're looking for,
right?
Is these theories. And
yeah.
So a little bit more to touch base on, maybe you know, the B.F. Skinner.
Yeah, we can talk through some of this stuff. I'll kind of maybe lead a couple of these topics, but I think one of the things that Katie asked me when she did a request on our website mm-hmm. was maybe here's a few topic options, and motivation was one. Motivation is everything to me because, like, how do we get work done? Motivation, period. If you don't have that, you're not going to succeed. So B.F. Skinner, it's important to know that, like, operant conditioning is a part of motivation and motivation theory, even in business. And operant conditioning, B.F. Skinner, he gives the example of the best way to motivate or to get someone to repeatedly operate a certain way, mm-hmm. right, in your business. It's called behavior management or behavioral organization theory, is to give them these rewards from these sanitation factors, right? So, right, to acknowledge someone, to pay them appropriately, to know what these pieces of the puzzle are. So Skinner would say, like, right, it's this lab rat. If you touch this little bar, some sugar will come out of this thing, and you'll get rewarded for that.
Right.
Well, friends, we're not much more complex than that. So even as business owners, right. we're just repeatedly doing this, ooh, piece of candy, type of actions, and it's why we build character, because we get rewarded for good character. It's why we make money, is because it gives us a reward or a high. And once we figure out how to connect ourselves to those dopamine receptors, then we continue to do those behaviors. So, mm-hmm. right, and he tested other things like punishment. Positive punishment means you touch the bar and we zap you or whatever, and we find out that's the worst way to train someone. Well, guess what? It's the easiest way to manage people, but it turns out that it's the worst way to motivate them. So when managers are like, you guys haven't done the sales you need, you know, I know you own insurance, mm-hmm. you know, so if you were just pounding, everyone's punished all the time, guess what? It does nothing for them psychologically if you do that. But if they're more about the reward and varied rewards for different things. So that's just like a boop. Here's a little thing that revolves around all of this leadership stuff. It's about maintaining the behaviors that keep people motivated and on task and all of that. That's the leadership side. The other thing we have to understand is the management side. So people will only feel maybe supportive and loved and well-liked, but there needs to be progress, or people also don't get the dopamine from kicking the ball. You know what I mean?
Yep.
They're just like, oh, we've got to move. We've got to grow. But if you're a company that's just stagnant, you'll also lose your best people no matter how much you pat them on the back, reward them, tell them they're good, give them self-development stuff. They're not going to be happy. People over time, they want you to grow the company. And that happens through vision casting and clarity, giving clear task for what you want to see happen. I think that's really an important part of the thing. So those are called leadership behaviors. And I just wanted to clarify something is a lot of times we look at leaders, we go, okay, what kind of traits do they have? And here's what we know is like people tend to look at leaders and they go, oh, it's men who tend to be taller. Sorry, Chris and Levi, that's how you got, but right, they model these quote unquote traits.
Yeah.
Like here's what a trait is. Like, you know, I tend to be fatter, which people aren't like, oh, that's a good leader. They don't look at that. So, but here's what we know, that although these traits might be identified with leadership, they're not good qualifiers, but we know that humans tend to process, oh, is this person a good leader or not? So then we move to the next thing, which is skills. Well, is this person a good orator, good public speaker? Do they have the skill of charisma or whatever? Well, fine. Those things do something for you when you're becoming a leader or leading people, but they ultimately are short. You're going to fall short if you rely on those things. We have to depend on behaviors and behavioral management in order to be a good leader. So, yeah, I could talk more on that with expectancy theory, but I didn't know you had questions.
Chris, you got questions?
I don't. Not over that. I will in a second, but I'll let you go ahead and maybe ask some if you have some questions or anything.
You like that?
I want to talk. Well, yeah, because I want to talk about kind of how people go to work with you and what you look for. You know, when you onboard a company or some leaders.
Yeah.
I was going to say that's kind of more or less where I was kind of going with that. So you actually, you went ahead and stole that.
I want to say this real quick. It's like leadership and setting goals and path goal theory is what it's called, requires different styles of leadership at every stage of the progress. So when I onboard an employee, I have to be directive. I have to live. I think about children's ministry. Children's ministry is one of these things that's like the hardest place to keep people in an organization. We know, like we talked about this earlier, but if you can lead a volunteer, you can lead an employee. So children's ministry is like a hurting spot in every church that I've ever heard of. And it's because people are so afraid to onboard. Because they have to be so direct. You have to be so task-driven. This is what you do. This is how you do it, right? And it's very, very deep. So organizations that do that well tend to onboard lots of children's ministry leaders. They don't tend to keep them long-term. That's when you need to move in the supportive role. Now you know how to do these tasks and come in every day and get set up, and you know the do's and don'ts, things like you know how to dodge the crazy talks that kids come up with, and right, like things that for some reason every time I get stuck in children's ministry, like, where do babies come from? And I'm like, oh, okay, is this what they're doing to you? I mean, you set them up. But anyway, the point being is like you have to get into a supportive role, which is built on relationships. So you go from a task manager to a high relationship manager. You're pouring into relationships. And then you have to evolve that position into participative, which means the employee or volunteer eventually has to move into, I need you to participate in what it means to lead this role. I need your input. I need your clarification. I need you to figure out how to make this better, right? So you're evolving with the task. And eventually you have to get to the achievement level, which is where someone goes through the ranks of whatever it is, and you're able to hand them off a thing that says like, okay, your job in the year of 2023 is to do X, Y, and Z, right? Like, I don't care how you do it, figure it out. As we move people through this process and build character and culture, that's what people are looking for, is the autonomy. The problem is most leaders pick one of these styles of management: directive, task-driven, supportive, participative, or achievement-oriented. Go do it. Are you a killer? Are you not a killer? Well, here's the truth. Nobody's a killer day one, bro. They need help. They need input. And then you can become a coach over time, and then, we can evolve out of that. So anyway, that's what I was going to say.
Yeah. It's really good. And I know for us, we try to take things back to the basics. So like, we're heavy in the real estate investing. And oftentimes we've been kind of told before that we need to step back and go back to 101, chapter 1. And I think you hit on that a lot here. But then allowing the opportunity for people to evolve and being able to be with them through each step of that process is something that we're trying to learn with our organization. And it's always good to have you on, or listen to you speak or whatever, and really take a deeper dive into these theories and such.
I think, you were asking about potentially working with people. I think what I would give to you is you need mentors and coaches in your life that know how to lead you, even if they don't know how to do what you're doing. Like, I'm consulting for this guy. He's one of my only local clients. I don't have very many, but Tim Albertson that owns ABE Painting or Abe Painting. And I have no clue how to paint. I don't know anything about the painting business. I'm learning it. But I've studied the contracting world, so I know some of that. But I know how to coach people. I know how to run a business. And so I can know nothing about what he does and still help him move his business forward, make critical decisions. So I think you have to find those people in your life that do that. I have to have a mentor. I have to have a coach that leads me, that knows how to build these strategies with me and encourage me and show me discipline when I need it and love when I need it and help me solve employee problems when my emotions are too impaired to make healthy decisions. So what I would say is that's important. You asked about what type of clients I take on. I'm super careful. My reputation means the world to me. And so, I'm always praying about what I should do. And sometimes I get a red flag and it's just discernment that has, I think some people have the gift of discernment that's they could know nothing about a situation, just be red flags. I don't know what this is, but gut check doesn't feel right? And I think we have to work with those people. That's in Patrick Lencioni's new book, 6 Working Geniuses, right? That's one of the things. So, but I'm super discernment oriented because my reputation means everything. So it has to be a good fit for me. I have to know the client's going to make more money than they spend on me because it's not cheap. You're paying a full salary for a person for a year for me to come in just a few hours a week. It's not that it better be a good deal for you or else you're going to resent me and I'm not going to have a great reputation. And then lastly, I have to know that you're serious about developing both your character and your business, because if you don't want me to chisel at your character, then we're probably not going to be a good fit, because those character pieces are what produce numbers. The motivation I build in chiseling your character is what develops you as a business professional. So
you're talking personal development along with business development.
Yeah, I can't separate them, because if I see a flaw there, then, and literally what I'll do is I have this client in that's a few hours from here. I love him. I really, but before I signed a contract with him, I said, hey, I'm going to chisel you on some things, and here's some clear things I think you need to fix in your character now if I'm going to work with you. My expectation is that if you don't fix these things, I will cut your contract. And I just need you to know that today, because I have an expectation for how you treat the people around you. Now, we can have different moral values, but some things I can't change on, like the way you treat other people has to be with the highest regard, because these people are really making you money. So I need to be able to develop those character things like empathy, interpersonal skills, like how do I address conflict, like all of those things. What is their motivation for making this business grow? I have to tap into that to get it. And then I help them build systems. We use tools like Traction or whatever to help build a business model. And then I hold them accountable for that. And at a certain point, I'm just doing executive counseling, so to speak, where it's like, hey, let's untangle your brain, get that on paper, and ask if that's executable or not, and whether it's feasible or not. And then I help them do risk assessment analysis to say, should we make this decision? How much of a risk is that? Like, help them make portfolio decisions. So, yeah.
So what's the relationship look like as far as length on average?
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting because most every client, except for one client that I've ever had, I've kind of dropped them because I'm like, hey, I think you're done, you know? It can be a long series. Like, I know I took over the account for ABE from another coach, JD, and he had been coaching him for like 6 years before, or something like that. So it could be a long-term thing. I would just say, like, hopefully I don't have to work 5 years to get traction implemented, or else I'm a waste of money. Like, this thing might take a year to get going, but at the same time, we're doing personal coaching. So, it just depends on the size of company and how many people there are to develop, and if we need to make organizational changes at a high level. So, I've worked with clients that are, up there, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're saying that you're going in and you're doing the personal and the business. You're not, because I've heard some people say, hey, you need to go get a personal coach and then you need to go get a business coach, and they need to be separated.
Yeah, there's some things I can't do in the personal coaching world just because I'm not going to be good at it. Like, for instance, a lot of personal coaches, they don't give you advice. And that's why I don't want to get a personal coaching certificate. They hold you to the standard of just ask a bunch of questions, Socratically get the information from them. So, I wouldn't be like a traditional coach because they use this Socratic method of, I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions, you're going to come to your own answers, and then I'm going to just hold you accountable for the things you say you want to do. I think that's great. My character does not allow that. Like, I'm too opinionated, and frankly, I think, like, I want you to buy some of the education that I've put myself through, so I'm going to give you advice and teach you the models, and I draw a lot of models for people and stuff, but I can do a sense of personal coaching that is, I can help you develop your character, and like one of the case studies from the book that I brought is this coach called, his name's PJ Fleck, and he was the youngest Division I football coach ever. He became a Division I football coach at 32. And he told everyone, like, I'm going to be the youngest Division I football coach. Achieved that. But he took over, like, Western Michigan University at Kalamazoo, and they had, like, the worst football team. They hadn't had a winning record since, like, 1904. Like, terrible program, right? And the first year, he kept this phrase up, row the boat, row the boat, row the boat. And every week, he would build tasks around, okay, what does it take to win a championship football program and to build the best humans possible? Because building the best humans possible is what gives you a championship program. Mm-hmm. So he broke it down into, like, academic, athletic, social, and spiritual. And each week, you've got to accomplish one of, something on each one of these tasks. And he'd be like, just keep your oar in the water, row, row, row. Well, his first year, they went 1-11. Terrible record, losing record. People start bringing oars to the game, snapping oars at the game, taunting them like, row the boat, ha, 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 right? And what they didn't know was he felt like this row the boat thing was a commission to get through the death of his young son that had a heart condition. And he felt like God said, keep your oar in the water, keep rowing. You're going to cross storms. It's going to be scary. So that's the background story. And you get this other team taunting you. Talk about a fire on these men who have now trusted you as a coach. Now they're being taunted by the other team, and they know the depth of the story of Row the Boat. That will fuel your flames, because you will run through a brick wall for the person you love that has poured into you, right? So now these tasks are on him. And what people don't know, too, is he rescinded all the scholarship offers for the year before he came in as coach. So he just said, I'm no longer going to continue these offers that you got under a different coach because I want to pick my guys. They need to be my culture. They need to be bought in. So he lost his whole recruiting class his first year, too. What's crazy is they went on to beat Auburn, ranked number 9, the next couple of years in the Cotton Bowl. So they went from the worst team, like, ever since 1904 to beating the number 9 ranked college football program in the Cotton Bowl. Then he went on the next year to become the head coach at Minnesota. They were terrible, took them to championship games. They won the Big Ten or whatever it was. And the whole point of that was, the whole point of the story is to say, he focused on creating the best human beings possible and teaching them how to have the perseverance to run through brick walls. And that's what created the championship program. So when I'm coaching a business, yes, I'm pretty good with financial ratios and knowing how finances work. I understand HR pretty well. I understand organizational theory and moving human capital and how to project. And I understand a lot about global markets. And none of that matters if I'm sitting across the table from a person that has no character value. because they can't put those assets into place. So I need to make sure that their personal development is in check with their professional development. So,
Love it.
yeah.
So as we wrap things up, some takeaways, just, working on your own character. What are some really good tips for that for the listeners? What should they be working on today?
Oof, that's a tough one because we all have our weaknesses. I know I for sure do. I think the number one thing you can do is have people in your life that you're really vulnerable with. Because until you feel safe enough to be vulnerable around people, and there's different depths of that, because like the vulnerability I'm going to have with the group of guys that I get together with and we talk about real life, and I'm like, hey, I don't know if I'm treating my wife right. Like, let me tell you what I've done. And those men to hold me accountable, that's a deep level of character building. And then even with my employees, like I have to at times say like, hey, I messed this up. You're smarter than me. Like those phrases of vulnerability build character in me, and they build character in other people because leaders go first. Yes, leaders take risk first, but leaders also have to be vulnerable first. They have to, they have to go first in all of these areas. So I don't know what each person needs to work on. That's gonna come, but I know that you have to have values for your whole company that are actual character values that you yourself and everyone in your company live by, and that you are actually checking and holding people accountable for. And you have to have personal values. And I just pushed a client into a situation where I was like, hey, here's the truth. You're suffering as a husband, and I think I need to talk to your wife to make sure that I'm hearing everything that's going on in your home life. And I'm not a counselor. You guys need to get a counselor. But I need to hear from her where you're struggling so I can hold you accountable for your counseling sessions, these things that I don't do to make sure that you're developing as a man. Is that something you're willing to submit to me to help you develop? And he was like, yes. And now he has like this awesome marriage. And that's not all because of me. It's because he made these decisions. But the more people you're vulnerable with, the more people that can speak into your life. So
makes a lot of sense.
I think it's like a circle. It's like if this is where you want to get, the tighter you allow people to push on you, the more you allow that. Because as soon as you get a weak link in your circle, you're going to go to them and be like, oh, well, I want to go do this. And I think Becky's an idiot, don't you? Like, and, everyone else is going, well, is Becky an idiot or are you a bad leader?
Right.
And the one person's like, no, Becky's a total idiot. You should fire her. Right? Like, that's the weak link in your circle, and you need to stop talking to that person.
Yeah.
Right.
So, anyway, sorry.
No, great value.
Yeah. That's why we have this is, being able to create that so that way, it's like-minded people that want the same success for yourself. I mean,
Yep.
Yeah.
So,
well, we always appreciate your time.
Absolutely, man.
Thanks for sharing a little bit of your knowledge. That book, how can people pick it up?
I don't even know. I use this book in my master program. It's called Leadership Theory and Practice. And what I love about it is there's all these evaluations in it. And I didn't even draw in my book, but every chapter has an evaluation like, do you have the traits of a leader? Do you have the skills of a leader? Do you have the behaviors of a leader? So there's like 8 tests in here that test you on your leadership abilities once you finish the chapter. But yeah, it's called Leadership Theory and Practice by Peter Northouse. So,
awesome.
Yeah, it's more of a college style book, but there's more in here than probably 10 leadership books that you can pick off the shelf that people
Let's
will
check it out.
So.
All right.
Yeah.
How do people connect with you?
So I own Moyer Consulting and Coaching. I also work for Higher Vision Coaching and Consulting. I guess you can check out Higher Vision's website or I guess you can call Chris or Levi. They can get
absolutely.
You in touch with me.
So,
I don't want to put my cell phone number out there. My wife could no, I'm kidding.
Well, hey, we appreciate your time today.
Absolutely.
Thanks for coming on.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Boom.